Welcome to Mishna, study Masechet Terumot Perek Yod Mishnah Bet. Over here in this Mishnah, after discussing in last Mishnah, mixing an onion, which has a strong flavor, with lentils, which may not even draw from a whole onion. Over here now, we're going to discuss an apple that's pureed, right? Now, when you add this to the dough, it could cause it to rise. And if it rises, the dough rises, if you remember earlier, in our Masechet, in the fourth or fifth perek, we said that if sourdough was added, sourdough is added to dough, and it causes it to rise, then the whole bread takes on the status of terumah. So over here, let's say you had an apple that was diced really well. It was almost pureed, right? And now you took it and you placed it into dough. And that dough became, now it rose, right? That apple was the catalyst, it was the agent that caused it to rise. So that's what we're going to discuss. Right? This apple is placed into the isa, into the dough, and it went ahead and it turned it into hametz, right? It made it rise. Right? The whole isa, the whole dough, the whole bread now becomes asura. Right, and this really goes, like we said earlier, again, the apple, we have to say that it's terumah, right? That's what we're talking about. And this goes, as we mentioned earlier, in the fifth perek, right? We saw the sourdough, right? It takes upon, because it's the agent, it turns the whole thing into terumah. Now, Harambam is bothered over here. Well, actually, I shouldn't say. In the first edition, Harambam doesn't say anything more than I just explained. In the second edition, right, when he went back and he fixed it, he was bothered by something. He was bothered by a later Mishnah, right, that says specifically that min b'she'eno mino, right, it shouldn't be a problem. Over here, it's not two of the same items. When we spoke about it in the fifth perek, we spoke about sourdough turning dough. That's two of the same. And therefore, it could turn it into terumah. But over here, we're talking about an apple, right, a pureed apple that's turning dough into terumah. And we know min b'she'eno mino shouldn't be an issue. And Harambam is bothered by this, right? He's bothered from a Mishnah and later Masechet Orlah. And he says, even though this is min b'she'eno mino, mikol makom, because the tapuach, right, al pi rov rishumo nikar, because it's something that's noticeable, right, rishumo nikar, me'od, because it's something very noticeable, it's rishumo nikar, it leaves its mark, right? Therefore, it's going to be asur. That's what Harambam says. Kach nir'ali bazeh. This is what it seems to me, and that's how he's mefarish this Mishnah. And ushar ha'inyan barur, and the rest of the Mishnah is self-explanatory, and we'll explain. Seorim shenafilu toch bor shel mayim. If you have barley that fell into a pit of water, afal pi shiv ishu, even though the water, right, afal pi shiv ishu, right, even though it took on this now foul flavor, right, from the barley, right, it gave it like a lousy taste. The water is mutar, and we don't say that, oh, now the water becomes terumah because it is barley that was terumah, right? And Rambam explains in the Mishnah Torah, he doesn't give the reasoning, but in the Mishnah Torah, he gives the reasoning that it's noten ta'am nifgam, right? It gave a bad flavor, and something that gives a bad flavor doesn't necessarily pass on the status. So even though the barley was terumah and it gave flavor to the water, because it gives a lousy flavor, therefore the water would be allowed. I would just point out that we see from here, even from the way that Harambam uses his language, that it's specific if it was done, right? You're not allowed to go ahead and add barley to the water to give it even a bad flavor. Only if it was done b'di avad, right? Something that's noten ta'am nifgam is allowed, right? Once it was already added, we can say, okay, it has a lousy flavor, and therefore you're allowed to eat it. But doesn't mean you're allowed to add the flavor of the chatachit.